You know, always a highlight of the evening for everyone who's been to a Gridiron Greats is this moment when we get an opportunity, and I get the honor, to introduce this proud, beautiful, strong woman who has this award named after her. Can everyone please welcome Sylvia Mackey?
Thank you so much, JT, for that fine introduction. And first, I want to thank Coach and Mrs. Ditka and all of Gridiron Greats for this wonderful opportunity for me to be here to welcome our next Woman of the Year for Gridiron Greats. I am so happy and so honored to present the Sylvia Mackey Woman of the Year Award to such a brilliant, caring, and understanding woman. She worked tirelessly on behalf of the retired players to make a more equitable retirement for them. Something realistic, something substantial, something they could hold on to. She understands the needs, the plight, and the contributions that these pioneers have made that make the NFL the great organization that it is today. It is at the top of the sports world and probably always will be. She's the founder and the president of Fairness for Athletes in Retirement, FAIR, FAIR. She fought the NFL for pre-93 players. She fought the NFL and won. Hello. It is my pleasure to present Lisa Marie Riggins with this award. Now let's see some of her other accomplishments right here on this video.
Lisa Marie Riggins is an Army brat born in Bremerhaven, Germany, and has made her way back to her family roots as President and Chief Executive Officer of USO of Metropolitan Washington, Baltimore. Her career path spans that of an actress in New York City, a criminal defense attorney, a state prosecutor, a personal injury attorney, and founding president of the nonprofit Fairness for Athletes in Retirement, FAIR. She is pleased to now serve her unsung heroes in the military community, working to bring support and dignity to those who perform great things in quiet ways is what motivates her. Lisa Marie started FAIR to advocate for better pensions for over 4,000 former NFL players who retired before 1993 and had been left behind and mistreated. FAIR was the public voice for these forgotten players, coordinating a national PR campaign and presenting the NFL and the NFLPA with a six-figure actuarial solution to the crippled pension plan. In March 2020, the NFL and the NFLPA voted to commit over $1 billion to raise the pension for retirees, giving pre-1993 players a 53% increase, the largest increase they've ever received. She received her BA in History and Literature from American University, an associate's degree from American Academy of Dramatic Arts, New York City, and her Juris Doctor from Fordham University School of Law. She's admitted to the Virginia, Maryland, and Washington, D.C. bar. Lisa Marie's best friend is her husband, John, and her favorite people are her two daughters, Hannah and Coco.
Lisa Marie Riggins.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. God, that's made me emotional. Thank you very much. You know I could take on the NFL if I could pull down John Riggins. Sylvia, gosh, I've known you for 30 years. We go back to the Hall of Fame in 1992 when our husbands were inducted in the same class. And I didn't know this until last night, but her daughters told me when they found out that they were going to be here with John Riggins' wife that their father, John Mackey, had never gotten over the fact that on the morning of the induction at the Hall of Fame breakfast, after a couple of Bloody Marys, John gave him a kiss on the lips. And then I said, well, he also kissed Lem Barney. He didn't kiss, who's the coach of the, Al. He didn't, Al Davis. He did not kiss him. But anyways, Sylvia and I go way back, and we have gone on this journey, and we've been trying to right some wrongs, so it's incredible for me that I'm here today. The previous gentlemen were so short, and this subject makes me so passionate, so I have to try and keep it short. But I will just say in 2016, I got on a plane from California going back to DC. And I sat next to a Washington, DC insider, and she knew who I was, she recognized the last name, and she said, you know, what about this concussion settlement? Because it was all over the news. The concussion settlement was not giving access to the older players like it was promised. And I talked to her about it, and then she said, well, thank God those older players have great pensions to rely on. That's what I did. I went, what? And I said, you have no idea. And I was so thankful it was a transcontinental flight because that's how long it took me to tell her about the pre-93 pension problem. And I told her about my pension, my poster boy pension guy, Ed White. And I'm going to tell you guys about Ed White because it says it all. Ed White played from 1969 to 1985. He was an offensive guard for the Vikings and the Chargers. He went to 4 Super Bowls, played in 4 Pro Bowls, retired at the age of 38 after 17 years in the NFL. Dan Fouts called him the most intimidating offensive lineman that had ever played the game. Ed White was encouraged by his union at the time to take his pension early because a lot of the players were told they weren't probably going to live much past age 55. So they took their pensions early at a much reduced rate. Ed White was taking $1,173 a month after a 17-year career and 4 Super Bowls. Then, much to his surprise, he lived past 55. And there was another surprise. At age 62, his pension dropped to $472 a month. He got a bump in 2011 in the CBA, and he was brought back up to $2,000 a month. So Ed White was living, he had $2,000 a month, $24,000 a year for 17 years in the NFL. What I came away understanding was nobody knew this story. Nobody understood this. They just assumed that all of these guys were golf courses, they had swimming pools, massages. They had no idea there was a huge demarcation from 1993 on back. So when we got off that plane, she said to me, you have to do something. We have to do something. I will help you. And that was 2016, and that was the beginning of FAIR. And when I got back to DC, I took meetings with lawyers and lobbyists and politicians and businessmen and football fans, telling that pre-93 story to everybody I could, and nobody knew about it. It was the piece of history that current players had never heard of, that fans were not aware of. And I will try to wrap this up, but why is 1993 important? This was a heroic labor story. These men were coal miners. They were the black lung story. They were players who were owned by the company prior to 1993. And they used their bodies and their backs and their brains to put the footers in the ground to build, as Sylvia said, the wealthiest professional sports corporation in the world. And many people were standing on their shoulders, but nobody looked back. And at that time, prior to 1993, they were elite athletes who were owned. The people who controlled their destiny, their movement, their worth, their salary was the commissioner and the owners. And they knew they were owned. So this is what inspired me. For the next 3 decades, from 1968 to 1992, they launched 5 player strikes. They launched numerous grueling class action lawsuits against the league. all for one thing, their freedom. Their freedom to negotiate, their exquisite skills in the open market. And they beat the league down, and they started winning in the courts. And they were blackballed. Many of them were traded in a way that ended their careers for their union activities. Finally, in 1993, the owners saw the writing on the wall, and they gave them the holy grail, which was free agency. It was the most historic CBA in football history. And those pre-93ers, they won that prize. But in a cruel twist of fate, they had fought for their right to freedom, and then after 1993, they had no more rights because they were former players. And nobody looked back. And the floodgates of wealth for players opened after 1993, but those pre-93ers had no access to the benefits, to the improved pensions. They were frozen in time. Their pensions were frozen in time. And I gave you the story of Ed White. So fair, I think the one thing that was different about this advocacy effort was we were running out of time. We had the 2020 CBA, 100th anniversary of the NFL. This was their last shot. And we decided to raise money because we needed money to launch a professional PR campaign to hire actuaries. We were going to make it impossible for this to be ignored because the facts were beautiful. And I think we got to the 12 members on the executive committee, and they held all of the power. The 12 members on the executive committee of the NFLPA, if they decided to do this and understood the history and understood whose shoulders they were standing on, and we served them up on a platter a very clean, simple solution to give these guys the quality of life they deserved, we felt we could move them to act, and they did. So I had a lot of help. I had an amazing kitchen table of Hall of Fame wives. One of them's here tonight, Merle Wilcox, Jerry DeLaMeliere, Dana Harris, Megan Holland, president of the Hall of Fame players. She knew how to corral the Hall of Famers. She knew how to organize them. She knew how to get them to advocate for me. They trusted her, and I trust her. She was huge. She's here tonight. I had a lot of support, a lot of help, and I want to thank my husband, whose honorable defiance in the name of his sense of truth has driven me crazy, but always inspired me not to do the expedient thing, but the thing that helps you sleep well at night. And the ending of this story, March of 14th, 2020, 1 week before the shutdown, the CBA voted to give these players the largest increase they've ever had, 53% increase, and Ed White sent me a text, and he is now getting $4,500 a month for the rest of his life. Thank you.